Hey guys, my name is Russ. Today I'm going to talk to you about the Outlaw Mage Tower in patch 9.1.5 of Shadowlands. So we'll jump straight into the video, but if at any point you decided that you like this kind of content, make sure that you give the video a like so that I know to make more of it. And if you want to see me kind of record or do any of this kind of stuff live, then I do have a stream which I'll link down in the description below. So jumping straight into the talents. There are a couple ways that you can go. In the first row, you can either go with Ghostly Strike or Quick Draw. Ghostly Strike will basically keep your boss damage up a little bit higher. This fight's very, very long. Personally, I find it quite boring. So you basically want to be keeping Ghostly Strike up on the boss if you can. Try not to blow it on any of the imps. But personally, I went with Quick Draw and with Vigor, which I'll talk about in a second. It just gave me like a bigger, I guess like nuke on my pistol shots, and I could use them on like Umbral imps and stuff which are far away. And also it's one less thing to kind of worry about with my rotation, because your rotation for the most part, you're not really like tunneling a boss. Quite often I found myself just running around chasing various types of imps, and like using CC and stuff like that. So Ghostly Strike wasn't really being optimized as that much. So I went with Quick Draw, but try both out, see what gels more with you. Level 25, there's absolutely no competition. You take Acrobatic Strikes. Firstly, it's the only one that can possibly increase your DPS out of this row. And secondly, quite often in this fight, she spawns like imps around her in a sort of circle. So it's going to make that a lot easier when you're blade flurrying, for example. Level 30, as I said, you can go either Vigor or Mark for Death. I found that with the scaling on this fight, because you'll scale down to level 45 or like eye level 50 or whatever, I felt like because you lose some of the borrowed power that Outlaw has, like with the roll the bones, offsetting your RNG and things like that, I found myself quite energy starved quite a lot of the time. So I felt like Vigor just felt smoother to me. But I completely agree that Mark for Death is probably the optimal talent to take here, because you can just Mark for Death like every single imp, just like chuck out a 5-point Mark for Death dispatch onto like every single one, right? So if you can utilize Mark for Death, I would personally save it for the imps. I did have some pulls where I did use Mark for Death. I would save it to use it on the imps rather than using it on Agatha herself. But that one's probably the optimal talent. I just felt really clunky without Vigor, so I just played with Vigor, but I got it killed. So on level 35, Iron Stomach is the only one that we can really use here. You'll notice quite quickly that the only like hard thing about this fight is really sustain. It's not too mechanically challenging. It's kind of like a kill priority and then sustaining yourself. So Iron Stomach is going to make our Crimson Vials heal us more, and generally we're going to be using that pretty much on cooldown, just to keep ourselves alive. Like it's kind of just like over time your health will just get lower and lower and lower as you get more and more overwhelmed, right? Level 40 Dirty Tricks. I took this mainly just so that I would always be able to gouge whenever I needed to. Really useful on the funneling imps and also sometimes the fuming imps. For level 45 I went with Alacrity, basically just a haste buff that we're always going to be keeping up. So it's just really good. And at level 50, most people go with Blade Rush so that you can kind of keep up some single target. It gives you a bit of energy back. You can use it with a Blade Flurry to do like a big AoE on a lot of imps. But I think I actually killed it when I was running Dancing Steel. I was just trying out Dancing Steel a couple times to see, because I felt like sometimes I didn't really have Blade Flurry up when I needed to. Obviously, if you're utilizing rotation correctly, you should always be able to keep up Blade Flurry anyway. But I found that like with a lot of running around and CCing and like using my globals on like stuns and gouges and things like that, I didn't always have like the combo points, the ideal amount of combo points to make sure that Blade Flurry was always reset. And I wanted to see if I could get more cleave and stuff. So I tried Dancing Steel, and apparently that's what I killed it with. But I know that most people go Blade Rush, so I guess I would recommend either one of those two. I tried out Killing Spree, and I found that like it just wasn't optimal. Sometimes, you know, it would Killing Spree the boss when her shield was up, or it would Killing Spree me into one of like the puddles if I had a fuming imp blow up. And the most annoying thing I found with Killing Spree was it would like Killing Spree me on top of the fuming imp, and that will trigger them to start casting their Plague Zone, and then you're like stuck in your Killing Spree animation, so you either have to cancel it to like CC the Plagued Imp because you don't want it to blow up and put the pool on the ground, right? So yeah, I wouldn't recommend Killing Spree. As far as consumables and things go, make sure your weapons are enchanted, probably with Lightless Force. It seems to scale really well. I'll take the Potion of Unbridled Fury, which just does insane single target. It'd be really useful like as you get into the fight. Probably pop one on pull and then one later with a Bloodlust or something. And there's this really, really busted trinket which has been nerfed, but it's still really good. It's called the Endless Tincture of Renewed Combat. Basically what it will do is it's just like a verse stat stick, and then every time that you kill target, it will heal you for like like it used to be like 1k health or something, but they've nerfed it down to like 300. As I said, sustaining this fight is going to be kind of like the thing that kills you, so this still just gives you quite a lot of passive healing through the fight. It's nowhere near as strong as it was, but it is still really, really good. So I would personally recommend picking up one of these because your damage isn't really important. Obviously you want to get the boss whittled down, but what is going to kill you more often than not is just running out of health and healing, and it's just like an overtime, like you just rot to death. So having this will just kind of like prop you up. That's kind of the one piece of gear I'd really, really recommend. Everything other than that, you know, same goes to like all of the other challenges. You can go and get all your time walking set and things like that. Like socketed gear is really good. Special weapons are really good, things like that. But I just ran like my Mythic Plus gear plus the Tincture Trinket. And with consumables, obviously Flask, Food, Rune Up. Make sure you put your poisons on. I ran with instant poison and mind numbing poison, and then I also bought a battle shout scroll. I was trying for a while without consumables, and I noticed like a huge difference when I did put the consumables on. So I would definitely recommend if you are struggling with DPS, because it is just a really long fight and she will get a little bit of healing off and things like that. Do just go get the consumables and kind of blast her out. It did make a huge difference for me. So the fight itself is pretty much just this really long target dummy fight with a couple mechanics, but it's just a kill order and priority on these imps. There are 4 types of imps. We have the funneling imps, which will basically run from the back of the room, whichever side that you're on in the room. They'll run from the opposite side, and 2 imps will spawn. They'll run towards Agatha, and they will start channeling this beam into her. What you want to be doing is CCing them if possible to break the channel, and then they'll go onto you for a small bit. They're going to be your main focus, because if they do get that channel off, they're going to be healing the boss. And she does have a lot of health, so you want to mitigate as much healing as you possibly can on her. It's just going to draw out the fight, and she does have like a soft enrage. The longer the fight goes on, the more damage she's going to be doing. That's like a stacking buff whenever her imps around her start dying. So funneling imps, your priority, although I would recommend you always save your kick for the actual boss itself, and I'll talk about that in a second. So probably just use gouges and kidneys and stuff on these. Your next highest prio is probably going to be the umbral imps. This could actually change depending on what's happening in the fight, but these ones essentially are going to be putting a shield on the boss so that she can't be damaged at all. They're really annoying. They do this ability called translocate, where they just like teleport to a different place. So you ideally want to be like hitting them from underneath the boss, because you'll be in range with your acrobatic strikes. I will warn you though, tab targeting on this boss, I noticed at least, was really terrible. So I'd recommend trying to click the nameplates, like actually click them with your mouse, which can be really annoying if they're teleporting around. But those ones are basically going to make it so that the boss won't take damage, which is going to be important for her dark shield that she's going to be doing. I'll talk about that again in a second. There's another type of imp called the fuming imp, which is basically going to be just walking around, not really doing much. But if it gets in range of you, it'll start casting this thing called Plague Zone. If that does go off, it's going to leave this big patch of poison on the ground, which never despawns. So ideally, you don't want these to go off, because it's just going to reduce the space that you have to move around during the fight, which, is quite a long fight, as I said. If you do stand in this zone, it's going to slow you and it's going to do damage to you, both of which are really, really inconvenient. So what I did was I actually saved my kidney shot most of the time for these. Or you can save your gouge. Ideally, you can kind of like kite these imps around. They only start casting if they get in range of you. So with acrobatic strikes, you can kind of outrange them and they'll just keep following you until they die, and they'll never actually cast. But sometimes, I don't know, it felt really inconsistent. Sometimes they would cast from far away, and sometimes they'd have to be like standing inside my hitbox before they started casting. So if they do start casting, you probably want to gouge them or kidney shot them or something, just to stop that Plague Zone going off, because as I said, it's going to be really, really inconvenient if it does. And the last set of imps are just going to be called Scorching Imps. They basically just stand there and they cast fireballs on you. So those ones just need to die. You can probably just cleave those ones down, unless there's a lot going on in the fight and you kind of feel like you're struggling for HP. I would then say like maybe switch some focus onto them. So I did kind of go over the CC and the kicks and stuff. As I said, I would wait with my kick and save that one for the boss. Like my actual kick, I would save for the boss, because she is every now and then, when she gets to 100 energy or whatever she has in her bar, like Fury energy, whatever, she's going to be casting this ability called Dark Fury, and basically she's going to put a shield on herself, much like the Assassination Mage Tower. You can only kick her once the shield is broken, so you want to be focusing your damage onto her at that point. Sometimes you can cleave it down if there's no Umbral Imps active, but as soon as her shield is gone, you want to kick this Dark Fury ability, because the longer that she channels it, the more damage it's going to do. She's just going to put the shield up and she's just going to spam cast these, like, I don't know, this damage into you. The longer she's casting it, it amps up more. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you can't break this quite quickly, then save your cloak for that. Like once it's been up for like 5 or 10 seconds, it's really going to start hurting. I would save your cloak for kind of like mitigation when it gets stacked up. I wouldn't use it on anything else throughout this fight really. Not even the boulders or anything like that, which I'll talk about in a second. Sometimes the overlaps on this Dark Fury ability are really annoying. Like she'll start a Dark Fury and then she'll spawn a set of Umbral Imps. Then you have to kill all the Umbral Imps before you can start damaging the shield for the Dark Fury before you can kick her. So that's the kind of situation where maybe you're going to want to cloak. The boss is really, really annoying in terms of like she can just spawn all the imps at once and then she can just go through a phase of doing nothing and then all the mechanics come. That's when I found this fight very, very frustrating. I don't know if there's a way that you can kind of like offset that. I assume like maybe the later you kick the Dark Fury, maybe you can sync it up with the timers. Maybe there's some maths behind that, but I was kind of just doing it without timers and weak auras and stuff like that. So in that case, if she spawns like all the imps at once, you're going to be having the Dark Fury going with the Umbral Imps up, and the funnels are going to be going into her, and it's like, what do I do? What do I hit? Usually I would hit the Umbral Imps to break the shield and then break the Dark Fury and then kick her. But then, you know, the funnel imps are going to be funneling into her. So it's like, maybe you can blind a funnel imp and gouge one and then kill the Umbral Imps and kick the shield. Stuff like that. So like you want to try and mitigate the healing on her while you're also saving your own skin by breaking the Dark Shield, right? But in order to do that, you have to go through the Umbral Imps. It's really, really annoying when that happens. So it might take a few tries of you just kind of getting used to potentially that happening and everything spawning at once. As I said, the Scorched Imps are like lowest prio. They're just going to be hitting you and doing damage. It's just annoying, you know, but like you will have the trinket giving you constant healing. You got your Crimson Vial and stuff like that. So just try your best. This fight is very frustrating. I think it's just one of the really annoying, boring ones. And personally, I'd recommend you try and do one of the other two if you're just in it for the transmog. But if you're in it, like for me, like the, I don't know, self-achievement, then I want you to do all three. So that's pretty much the whole mechanics of the fight. There's not really much else to explain. It just repeats, except at 50% she's going to TP away to one end of the room, and then she's going to start summoning these boulders on top of all of her other mechanics. She'll shoot these green pools on the ground as well. Obviously, just don't stand in those. They're green swirlies, and then they turn to green pools. She's going to spawn these 3 boulders like in waves. So there's kind of like, you got to imagine it kind of like 3 aisles. She's just going to spawn like middle, left, right, or left, middle, right, or left, right, middle, or something like that. She'll always spawn the boulders in sets of 3, and then she won't spawn them again for a little bit. So the first time she's going to TP them away, you kind of position your camera so that you're looking at where the boulders will spawn from so that you can see and dodge them. Don't try not to stand against the back wall. And then when she TPs away to the other side of the room, you're going to have to like deal with the boulders coming from behind you. So you can either spin your camera to look at it that way, or you can actually just position yourself so your back is kind of against the back wall that she's behind. And then you can like look your camera like through her legs and see where the boulders are coming if you need to. Obviously, it could be quite chaotic with the imps and things like that in their positioning. So just try and keep an eye out for where those boulders are coming from. Remember that once you see 3 boulders go past you, you don't really need to deal with them for maybe another 10-15 seconds. But yeah, that is pretty much the fight. Very long, repeating. It's just a few mechanics, but they just slowly layer over the top of each other. Probably the biggest like wipe factor, I'd say, is kind of like an overtime wipe. Again, would be letting those fuming imps blow up and just causing like the patches on the ground. You might get 1 or 2 throughout the fight, but if you can, you know, stop a lot of them going off, it's going to make it loads easier for like being in the right position so that you can cleave everything with your blade flurry and things like that. So I'd highly recommend, you know, looking for those fuming imps and just making sure that you're either kiting them while you're dealing with other imps, or you're just like gouging them or stunning them or something during their cast if you're going to go for them. But good luck with it. Hope you guys enjoyed the guide. Hopefully you learned something. And yeah, if you'd like to see any of the other 2 mage towers, I made much more like in-depth complex guides and walkthroughs to all of the abilities and stuff like that, and I personally think they're more fun and they're more challenging and they're more rewarding. So go check out those 2 videos, and yeah, feel free to subscribe if you like the channel, and make sure that you like the video. I'll see you over on the stream or down in the comment section below, and yeah, until next time, peace.